My great-great-grandparents were both born in Krakow, Poland, where they came from farming backgrounds. Growing up, they were both placed in religious schools. My great-great-grandfather, James Rankowick, in a seminary, and his future wife, Victoria Verbitsky, in a Catholic girls' school. Both, however, thought that there might be something more out there for them than a future in religion or farming. Because of this, they left for Scotland, where they stayed with a distant relative on James's side of the family. When they arrived in Kilbirnie, Scotland, one of the first things they did was get married on January 1st, 1886. Later that year, James was given several horses to sell in London and instructed to bring back the money. However, he had different ideas. Only a few months after their marriage, James and Victoria Rankowick used the money they received from the sale of the horses to buy tickets for their passage to America. James and Victoria arrived at Ellis Island in the summer of 1886, along with a relatively large wave of European immigrants. Once they made it through processing, they were finally free to do what they wanted. For several years, they lived in New York City. Eventually, they moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where they led entirely new lives. Once there, they started running their own pharmacy on 2212 Tustin Street. With the steady business of the pharmacy and the rent they collected from tenants living upstairs, they soon made enough money to move into a larger building down the street. They even had a grand opening with a full band. This new building was in a much busier location right next to the post office, and allowed the Rankowicks to prosper for many years to come. Now that they were settled in, they began to connect with other immigrants living in Pittsburgh. Soon, there was a fully established community of Polish immigrants who met at the Rankowicks store after hours. Victoria loved driving this small group forward. Pictured here, she was always entertaining her Polish guests, and would often prepare elaborate meals and decorate the house for parties. Whether they were reading books or worshiping together, or simply being with people from similar backgrounds, it certainly made the transition to the American way of life much smoother. Here's a picture of Victoria after they had lived in the U.S. for several decades. Even at the age of 70, she still invited her old Polish friends over to chat. By then, they had moved out of the city, and were living in a suburb of Pittsburgh called Fox Chapel in Allegheny County. Ever since then, my family has lived there, with my dad being the first generation to move away since the Rankowicks. Ever since they moved to America, the Rankowicks did everything they could to get the best lives for themselves and for their families. Of course, there were many obstacles that they had to overcome, but in the end, the rewards were well worth the struggle and sacrifice. For the Rankowicks, the American dream was very real, because after lives of working hard to achieve their dreams, they were very successful, as were their descendants. They were able to start their own business, made many new friends, and retired in relative comfort. What could be more American than that?